Hold up, I am on my way, I'm in motion. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's go outside. We can hang out on the beach without freezing. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie. Today I have a crafty 4th of July episode for you where I have all of my new DIYs I've made this year in 2025 for the 4th of July, a total of 13 of them. We have traditional 4th of July and coastal. For the first DIY, I'm going to use one of the woodplex signs from the Dollar Tree that has home cut out on it and one of their long board signs. Now, 4th of July, if you haven't noticed, doesn't have a lot of crafting supplies. At least my Dollar Generals don't. So sometimes you have to get creative and use some items from the crafter square. My skinny sign is a little long, so I'm going to have to cut that down. And I noticed there were some tabs, maybe from how they cut those out at the Dollar Tree, but it was easy enough to trim those off. I'm going to take the long board sign and take it to my saw, cutting it shorter so it will be small enough to fit behind the home. I want that to be behind it. I want to do stars and stripes on this one, and I want to do stripes on the home sign. I thought home would be perfect because home of the brave, home is the United States, so I thought it kind of made sense. The first thing I'm going to do is cover the entire thing with white acrylic paint. I thought that it would be easier to use a foam brush on this, but I think it might have been a little bit easier to use a roller on it. I found that the cutout of the letters was making my foam brushes fall apart a little bit, but I was able to get this painted white. And I also took the time to go around the inside of the letters because I noticed some of my white paint dripped down, and compared to like the wood burning they used to cut these out, it was kind of noticeable. And so it took a little bit of extra time, but I went in and painted the inside of my letters white as well. What I want to do is flag stripes. The mistake I made, though, was using Dollar Tree painter's tape. Sometimes I have success with this, but for flag stripes, you might want to use like some 3M or some better brand, maybe stickier painter's tape, because I noticed I did get some bleeding. To avoid bleeding, I thought I'll just use a Dollar Tree roller. You get all of those items for $1.25. The brushes, the gloves, the tray, the roller, and now it comes with like a replacement roller, so that's really cool. And I'm just going to use red acrylic paint for my stripes. The reason I chose the cheaper Dollar Tree painter's tape is because it was about the right size that I wanted for my flag stripes. I want to do vertical stripes on this one, and I'm just going to go over it with some red acrylic. I thought rolling over it with the sponge roller lightly that I wouldn't get a lot of bleeding. I think it was the painter's tape for real though, because I did get some bleeding and I did have to touch that up. Because you know, red paint, when it gets on something, it's really kind of hard to cover up. I'll show you here what kind of bleeding I'm talking about. I'm going to distress it, but it was a little bit too much bleeding for my taste. So I decided to make it look a little bit better. I'm just going to tape off my red lines with some better painter's tape and then touch up the areas that bled with some more white acrylic. So this project probably had the most painting time today because I had to touch up these lines. But with flag stripes, that is something you're going to want to be really crisp. And I thought the vertical looked better on this one. What I'm going to do is do the flag stars to peek out from behind the letters to spell out the word home for the stars and stripes. And since I went ahead and painted the inside of my letters, I did go ahead and paint the inside of my letters red too, to kind of make that a little bit more cohesive going down the sign. For the sign behind it, I'm going to use one of the Dollar Tree chair covers. This is not a flag. Every single time I craft with these, I get people in the comments telling me that I can't cut this. It's a chair cover. It's not a real flag, people. And I'm just going to use the star part. And I'm just going to cut out that section. I was hoping that it was going to be large enough to cover the entire sign, but I did end up having to use 2 of these because it wasn't quite as big as I thought it was. So I can cover about 2/3 of the sign, maybe 3/4. And so I'm going to use another one for the final piece and kind of piece it together just making sure that I don't really have a seam in between where the letters are peeking through. I don't want that to be real noticeable. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out another of the star patterns. Other things you can use for the star patterns from the Dollar Tree, like wind socks, bandanas. I've crafted with lots of things to try to get the stars and stripes. And I covered my side with Mod Podge. And I don't know about you, but I always use too much. I always put it on like I put on paint, I think, and you don't really need that much. So I spread that out, and then I'm gonna lay my stars right on top using a paper towel to make sure it's all adhered. There's no air bubbles or anything like that. Kind of letting the Mod Podge seep through it to seal the top of it as well. And then I'm gonna cut this right where the stars start here, so I can kind of get my pattern to match up here and add the second part here for the bottom and maybe right about right there. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and let that Mod Podge dry before I try to cut off my excess fabric. And this sign is just big enough to cover up the letters. So the width of it is what I'm talking about. It's pretty much exactly the right size. And you wouldn't really have to have this. You could just cover the back of it with fabric. But these thinner Dollar Tree signs, whenever I can layer them, it makes them thicker, a little bit more substantial. I'm usually happier with them. So I let it dry. I cut off my excess material. I poked holes in the fabric so that I could reattach a hanger since this already has holes in it. I'm going to do that for this sign because the other sign doesn't have any holes for a hanger, and I want this to be a hanging sign. If you wanted to make this like a leaner sign, you could skip this part. I just put a little hot glue on the end to make it easier to go through, and I'm tying these on the back because I'm going to sandwich the twine there in between the two signs, so I'm going to need that to lay flat on the front side. So I just knotted them on the back, and now we can start putting this sign together. There's definitely a multi-step process to this sign. I'm going to use hot glue, and I have to kind of work quickly because there was lots of areas there I needed to add hot glue to because, again, it's not the same width as the sign. I really had to do it above and below each one of the letters. To decorate the hanger and make it not quite so plain, I'm going to use some raffia. This is some of the red raffia from Christmas. Sometimes I keep some of my Christmas stuff, like the stars, the raffia, things like that are red, and kind of save them for 4th of July, sometimes even Valentine's Day, because Christmas they seem to have a lot more red stuff. So I'm just going to make a very simple bow by doing 2 loops, 2 sets of tails. I'm not a big fan of working with raffia, but I thought it would look good for this. I used a second piece to tie around to form the bow like this, and it's a little crazy now. I will trim that up a little bit, but first I'm going to tie it to the hanger. And the same piece of raffia I used to tie it together, I'm going to use to tie to the twine. You can't pull super tight with the raffia. You might want to use twine if you find that your raffia is breaking, but mine seemed to work. And I'm just going to pull the tails down together and trim them off. I don't mind if it is a little bit wild. And then I want a primitive vibe to all of these 4th of July DIYs today. So I want them to look old, distressed, very old school Americana. So I'm going to distress mine with some Antique Wax by Waverly. I go over the white stripes with the Antique Wax by Waverly, and I go over the red stripes with just some white acrylic. And I'm using those chunky brushes from the Dollar Tree, making sure to drag them in all one direction to distress. If I get it a little bit too heavy anywhere, I will wipe off the excess with a baby wipe. And for you people that do not like distressing, just skip this step. And I think it looks really cute with that level of distress. I do want to frame it out to make it even thicker and add a little bit of wood to it. To do that, I'm using one of these easel kits from the Dollar Tree. I've been crafting with these a lot lately. They have some really great pieces of wood in there. I'm going to use the 2 longer pieces here for the sides. They're the perfect length. All I have to do is kind of cut off the little slanted part here at the end with my saw. And then I have another piece that is the stand that is the same size wood. So that's going to work out perfectly. I'm going to cut that. This is going to be big enough for the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to go to my saw and cut that down to 2 more pieces of that. And I am cutting them a little bit shorter than going all the way to the edge. I wanted that layered look to this frame. And so I think that that is going to look really cool and add a lot of personality to the sign. I do want to stain them with some Antique Wax by Waverly to bring out that beautiful wood grain in them. You only have to stain 3 sides, but on the larger ones, I stained all 4 sides because I liked the wood grain on one side better and I kind of wanted that side to go up. As you can see, they definitely don't look the same on each side. So just pick your favorite side for the front where everybody's going to be able to see it. And I found that the little stencil dauber sponges work great for staining these, one of the small ones. And then I'm just going to glue these actually onto the front of the sign to frame these out. Not going all the way to the edge. As you can see, a little bit of red and white flag is going to be peeking out from the sides. But I'm really happy I did this because the home sign itself is really thin. And even with the other sign I added behind it, still super thin since it didn't really go all the way to the sides. So this added a little bit more fun to it, I think. I'm just attaching them with hot glue and just gluing a square. I'm definitely going to have to pick up more of these easel kits because I've been finding so many uses for them. I love that it comes disassembled like that and you can use the pieces for whatever you want. So I hot glued those all on. I think that this little home sign is ready to go. Let me show you how cute this turned out. Definitely probably a little bit more painting than I was expecting with this project, but I do like the final result. I love the primitive vibe for 4th of July. It's like my favorite kind of thing. Besides coastal, I love my coastal 4th of July, but I think primitive and 4th of July really goes together. I hope you're enjoying today's video. If you are, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate it. The next DIY is going to be a flag candle DIY using one of these long candles from the Dollar Tree. I just removed the wrapper. Have you noticed that the Dollar Tree has raised the prices on these to $1.20 or $1.50? I still had some that I paid $1.25 for, but I noticed that was a craft supply that they have raised the prices on. I used a little bit of the adhesive remover and cleaner on that to make sure I got all of that off so that I could decorate the candle. For the ribbon, I got this flag ribbon on Temu. I was on there trying to find some substitute beach items for y'all, and I found that. I thought that was really cute. I'm going to combine that with some Dollar Tree ribbon to do a stars and stripes. So stars on the top, stripes on the side. If you don't have the ribbon from Temu, you could always use a chair cover, really similar star pattern on that for your fabric, or you could just use the flag ribbon from the Dollar Tree that has the stars and stripes on it. I'm going to kind of sketch out where the ribbon is going to fall with a chalk pencil so I'll know how far to take my stripes up. I don't want to go all the way to the top. And instead of hot glue on this project, I'm going to be using tacky glue because I don't want that soaking through my ribbon and a candle gets hot. I thought the tacky glue would be a nice strong glue alternative. So I cut my ribbon long enough that it would slightly go under my star ribbon and go to the bottom. And I'm just going to start by cutting out a few of these to get us started, using one as a template to cut the other ones out. You could do the stripes horizontally if you wanted to go around, but I thought it looked a little bit better vertically. So I just add the tacky glue to the back of the ribbon, and I actually added the glue on the glossy part. So the front part is more of a matte finish to go with the primitive vibe of these DIYs today. I want the glossy side down. And so I just kind of space them out about the width of a ribbon for like some even flag stripes. And I'm going to go all the way around the candle and do that. The great thing about the candle already being red is I don't have to do the red stripe. I can just do the white stripe. I guess if you got the white one, you could do the same thing. Just use some red ribbon. Just going to save you a step on the stripes. And I love how this turned out. It was so easy. I'm still going to be able to burn it. But I wonder why these went up to $1.50 when other things haven't. Have you noticed things at the Crafter Square going up to $1.50 at your Dollar Trees? If you have, let us know down in the comments below because I've got my eye on you, Dollar Tree. First, no shore living, then raising prices. No, 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 no. I tried to get you guys an email address to complain about no shore living this year, but despite my best attempts, I cannot get an email to save my life from anybody, not even store managers. But when you go to your Dollar Tree, make sure to let them know that you want Shore Living back next year because we definitely need to get that back in stock. I'm going to use the tacky glue for the star part of the ribbon too, just painting that onto the back and gluing this slightly overlapping the ribbon. It did soak through my fabric ribbon a little bit. I do start the ends with some hot glue just to make sure it stays on until the rest of the glue. And the tacky glue worked really well for this. I was impressed. It dried clear, nice and strong. I was thinking I've used it for outdoor shell projects and it's held up really well. So I think it's going to hold up well here on a candle. I slightly overlapped that ribbon there on the back, used hot glue for the end again, and then I just wiped off my chalk marks that I had on there for a guidance on the ribbon. And that is really all there is to it. We have a Stars and Stripes candle, perfect for the 4th of July. I really like decorating for the 4th of July. I love having a summer holiday to decorate for, and not just like cheap party decor. Like sometimes I want stuff like this that's pretty that I can sit out in my house. And sometimes I like to add a little 4th of July to unexpected places like my kitchen, my bathroom, different places around the house. And a candle is perfect for that. The next Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to take some scrap wood. This is 1 foot portions. These are pretty much the same as the ones that you can buy at the Dollar Tree, but I had some old wood in my garage that I cut up to get rid of, and this is a great project for that. What I want to do is make a hanging number 4, like a giant 4, and this chunky wood I thought would be perfect. So I measured out an angle for the top of my 4, took it to my saw and cut that down. And I'm not using my miter saw like to miter. I'm just kind of cutting exactly where I need to cut and taking it and cutting it right where I need to cut. A little bit easier. For this part, I'm going to also cut it above and below the middle part of the 4. I want it to all sit flat because it's not thin. So I'm going to cut around that middle section too with a top part and a bottom part. I also don't want my 4 to be this long, so I'm going to cut this part over here down a little bit too. So I just kind of take it piece by piece, taking it back and forth to my saw. If you were going to do this with like some paint stir sticks or some Dollar Tree rulers, you might be able to layer them on top of each other more. But since this wood is so chunky, I really wanted everything to lay flat, which is why I cut everything down to size. The next thing I'm going to do is stain the top of my wood with some Antique Wax by Waverly. I'm going to leave the sides unfinished, and I only wanted to stain the top. So I stained that, and then I wiped off the excess with a baby wipe to give me a medium stain on this. I want it to look very rustic. And the reason I'm staining it before I put it together is because I'm going to use hot glue to attach it together. And I know the hot glue will definitely interfere with my stain if I get it anywhere where I need to stain. So I decided to stain my pieces first because I've made that mistake before. So time to put it together. I use Gorilla Glue hot glue. It works pretty good for wood, but you could always use wood glue if you were concerned about the strength of this. It seemed to do pretty well. This is how I hot glued mine together, just piece by piece here. And I really love how this 4 turned out. I was considering writing July on it, either across or down one of the beams, but I really liked the simplicity of it. Even without the word July on there, I think I liked it better. Now I'm going to make mine hanging using ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to use this thinner ribbon. I love this ribbon from the Dollar Tree. But since there's more wood on the left side than the right, I do have to kind of move it over a little bit. I can't hang it right there at the corner. Otherwise, it's not going to hang straight. So I need to hang it right about here. So I just kind of have to figure out a way to do that. And then I want to make a patriotic bow for the top. I found that right about here was the sweet spot. So I pull it around, pull it tight, and I'm using my staple gun to staple that to the back. This wood is so thick, I can definitely use my staple gun on that. And I'm going to have it go up like that and loop and come back down. So I also used hot glue just to kind of make my ribbon stay in place. I'm going to loop it like this. This ribbon's going to be hanging out of my patriotic bow. And I really love the fact that it's almost like a burlap color in it. It's really pretty. So I loop that. I use my staple gun again to attach that to the back and cut off the excess ribbon. And that way it will hang level. So kind of see if you're making this, where exactly you need to hang that if you're going to hang it. So yours will hang flat. For the bow, I'm using the flag ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I just pinch it, do 2 loops, 2 tails, very easy little bow. And then I'm just going to tie that off. And I'm going to also tie that to the hanger like that. I think that's really festive. I think making your own bow like this is even prettier than the ones that are pre-made. I just take some twine and tie it off here in the center, trying to make sure my loops and tails are about the same, and flip that over, tying it off again. I can then tie that onto the hanger that the 4 is going to be on. But first, I'm going to dovetail my ends here just by doing it all in one step, folding them and cutting that down to size. You could also make a base and make a standing sign, but I found that the sign was a little too thick to use this as a leaner or anything like that. So that's why I wanted to make mine a wall hanging. This could also be a really cute door hanging for the 4th of July. Once I fluff up my bow, I'm going to go ahead and put the ribbon over the top of it like this because it's a little bit decorative, right? So that will cover up the twine that we used to make the bow. And then we can also use that same twine to tie this off as well. I probably should have made mine even longer because then I could have made my hanger with it, because I did have to go back and add a hanger to it so that I can hang this on the wall. But I love the way it's looking. I'm just going to use another piece of twine and feed that through the twine that we just tied on there, and then tie that off to make the hanger. Super easy to do, and I really love how this turned out. I wanted to add the word July, and then I was like, if I add it and then I regret it, then I'm not going to be able to take it back. But I am going to distress it a little bit. So I used just a little bit of white acrylic, working in the direction that the board originally went. I just distressed that all over just to give this a little bit of a primitive vibe as well for this DIY. And I think it turned out really cute. I think it has a lot more character than buying a giant wood for. And just using some scraps from my garage, the only thing I had to spend money on was the ribbon from the Dollar Tree. But this is how it turned out. Doesn't it look really cute? I think it's a great use for scrap wood if you have any. But again, that craft wood from the Dollar Tree would definitely work. I love it. I think it's really fun and nice and large. For the next DIY, I wanted to make a flower box. I'm going to make it with 2 of the pallet board signs like this and 2 of the little mini pallets like this for the sides. I found that the mini pallets were the perfect size to make a little flower box. I want to put it together like that, where I have the 3 pallets on the one side, 4 pallets on the front and the back of our flower box. And I'm going to simply hot glue these together to form the box. This is going to be a flower box for some faux florals, some 4th of July red, white, and blue flowers. And so it doesn't have to be super strong. It's going to be more decorative. For the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I just add hot glue here on these 4 beams and then add this. The skinnier part of the palette is going to be on the inside like that. I wanted the larger boards on the outside. And then all I have to do is glue the other side on. This little flower box was so easy to make as far as construction here. So I went ahead and put hot glue on both sides and set that on there, forming a little palette flower box. Super cute. I thought this would be really easy to decorate like a flag for the 4th of July, an American flag. So what I'm going to do is paint everything white, everything on the outside of the flower box. I know it doesn't have a bottom yet. I'm going to add that later, but I thought that would get in the way right now as far as painting. So I did make sure to use a brush so I could get in between the palette pieces. I really want to cover as much of the raw wood as I can. And that front and back parts were a little bit easier than the side parts because I have the inside of the palette like that too. So I really tried to get my brush in there and tried to paint anything that you're going to be able to see white. But you know, we are going to distress this. So if there are some bare wood that ends up showing in the end, it's going to be okay. It's going to kind of go with the distressed look of it. But I do that on all 4 sides. I'm not going to worry about the inside. You're not going to be able to see the inside of the flower box at all. And what I want to do is use the horizontal little pallets to make my flag stripes. And then I'm going to be adding flag stars with one of those paper flag banners there from the Dollar Tree. I love crafting with those. Those are one of the few things I buy from the 4th of July aisle for crafting supplies because they work great for that. Some holidays I just feel like Dollar Tree does not give us enough crafting supplies for, and 4th of July is definitely one of them. So I think that looks pretty good. I did go in and make sure to do the tops of my beams as well, anywhere that it might be obvious there was no paint. And then I'm going to use painter's tape for the stripes. You could do as many stripes per palette as you want. I think I'm only going to do 2. And I'm just using a red paint and one of those stencil daubers from the Dollar Tree to simply paint that on. I do want to have a little rectangular area up here for my stars, so I taped that off too so my red stripe wouldn't go all the way over. And I did 2 at a time, otherwise my painter's tape would overlap what I was trying to paint. And so I'm going to add more here. Again, keeping that one part just white. I'm going to do 2 more stripes here, 2 more red stripes for our flag. And it's a very easy flag since we're only doing 4 stripes. I kind of like the red on the top and the bottom, but since I was doing them even like that, I really couldn't do that. And then I'm going to do the same thing here on the back, taping those off, and I'm going to have a flag on the back of it as well. And then for the side panels, I'm going to paint them flag stripes as well. So just mapping that out with my painter's tape and painting this, trying my best not to get any red paint on the white. If you do, if you wipe it off as soon as possible with a baby wipe, you'll probably be okay. And then for the sides, I don't have as many pallets. I only have 3, but I think we can do it the same way, just doing the top part of each one of the boards red. That way it kind of keeps that stripe pattern going all the way around. They do have the sides where we put it together, and I did go in and kind of paint those just to make it feel a little bit more cohesive, continuing a stripe on if I could. Another thing you could do to get the flag pattern on these is to decoupage the flag napkins they have in the 4th of July aisle onto the front and just cutting off the excess material. I've done that before for the pallet, like pallet signs in the little wood crates. It turns out really cute too. But I wanted to take advantage of the pallets to actually use those to paint them. And I love how this turned out. I think it's really cute. Anywhere where I could continue that red stripe, even on the top parts, I did just to make it look a little bit better in case you can see that in the final product. Now for the stars, I'm going to use this. This comes in a red star and a blue star pattern, and I usually use the blue ones more. It is paper, but it's a great craft material, and I'm going to decoupage that on. I wanted to see about how big. I had room for a total of 6 stars, so 3 stars on each one I think is going to fit perfectly. And I'm going to cut those down to size and cut individual strips. So I could decoupage one on each one of the strips with some Mod Podge, which was really easy to do. So 3 stars on each one. If you cut almost to the top and the bottom of the stars, it's going to be the perfect size for you. And I think I have enough on this one piece. I might as well just waste one piece of that craft material. I really use them only for that. I think they're, I guess, supposed to be a party decoration being made out of paper like that. But they work great for decoupage. So I just put some Mod Podge down and go over those. I dried them and then Mod Podge on the top. You definitely make sure you dry it. Mine wanted to wrinkle a little bit there. I was able to get most of the air bubbles out of it. The paper is thin, so you're not going to want to work with it too much, but I did want to seal it with one coat of Mod Podge at least so that I can go over and distress that in a little bit. For the bottom, I just wanted something flexible and easy to cut. So I'm using the flexible cutting mats from the kitchen aisle at the Dollar Tree. It's going to work perfect because you're not going to be able to see it down here. I'm going to be able to cut it down easily. So I just cut a rectangular size portion of this, and then I can glue that on the bottom. It's going to keep my floral foam and everything in there, so it definitely serves a great purpose, but see how easy it is to cut. You do have to kind of cut the corners off because you need it to be a little bit rounded, And so I did that for my 3 corners that weren't rounded already. Added a little bit of hot glue all the way around the base and added the bottom to the little flower box. And now I don't have to worry about getting paint or anything on it because I've already got everything painted and ready to go on the sides of our little flower box. And this is what it looks like so far. I'm gonna distress it in a minute, but I did go ahead and fill it with some florals here. While that all dries, I'm gonna cut down some floral foam from the Dollar Tree, a block just large enough to fit. I'm gonna cover that up with a little bit of floral moss. And I found some really cute red, white, and blue flowers for the 4th of July at Dollar Tree that are a little on the smaller size, so I think that these are going to work well. I'm going to cut these and put them in individually. I do make sure to leave the leaves on all of these. I went back and forth whether I should add some more greenery to this. I was able to fill it up pretty well. There's room for about 3. So I did like red, white, and blue. And then each row I just alternated which color I did next. So it's going to look a little bit more random in there with the red, white, and blue. And till I completely get it filled up. I think that looks really cute. I do plan to add an American flag from the Dollar Tree too, a little tiny one, but I did want to distress it now that everything is dry. So I'm just going to go over it and distress slightly with some antique wax by Waverly. This is just going to give it that aged old look that I wanted for the primitive vibe on this. If I got too much anywhere, I just went over with a baby wipe and cleaned it off. Don't be scared to distress if you like that look. And again, if you don't like distressing, just skip this step. Just a very light distressing. I'm only going to use the Antique Wax by Waverly on this one. And then I thought about adding little feet to it, but I really wanted it to be like just a flat flower box look. And the great thing about this DIY is you could put this anywhere. Kitchen, bathroom, anywhere around your house, your office, even outside. It's super cute and was so easy to put together. So I think that looks good. We can add the little American flag. I'm going to do it a little bit at an angle so it kind of gives me a little curved flag effect like that, pushing that down into the florals like that. And here it is, our little flag flower box. I think it turned out really cute. Everything was from the Dollar Tree and it was really easy to put together. Again, the stars, I just used the stars from the party banner. And the stripes we just painted on. And I think it turned out really cute. It has a lot of character. You could really use this anywhere, even on a patriotic tier tray. I think it would be cute. For the next DIY, we're going to use these large wood dowels from the Dollar Tree. These are the ones that come 2 to a package, so they're really big. And we're going to make a rustic star out of these, a rustic star leaner. So we're going to need a total of 5. And I'm going to go ahead and stain all these to bring out that great wood grain with some Antique Wax by Waverly before we start putting this together. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make a star out of these because these dowels are so thick, but I was able to make it work, so I was really happy with this. I've always wanted to make a star project like this, but I've never really thought that I could pull it off. But I just kind of went for it and thought, we'll figure this out. So again, I'm using a sponge stencil dauber and I'm using some Antique Wax by Waverly and we're going to stain all of the sides of all of these. I thought the dowel would be an interesting way to do it. I know people sometimes do them with like paint stir sticks kind of thing, some of the flatter wood, but I wanted more of a skinnier star and something that I can use like twine to tie the ends of them. And the only like difficulty I had was the final piece, but I was able to make it work, to make it all come together. I'm going to use mine as a leaner, but you could probably hang this on your wall as well. Now that I have them all stained and dried, I'm going to start putting this together. Now, I looked it up and the tips of a star are 36 degrees, but I don't have a protractor on my craft station. I don't think I'd ever need one of those again. I'm going to try to estimate a little bit here with one of my squares from Dollar Tree. That's a 90-degree angle. So if I can try to get my angle to be like a third of that, I'm thinking I can make this work. I used a dot of hot glue to lay one of my dowels on top of the other. And then I'm going to take some of the twine from the Dollar Tree and tie a knot to tie that off. I'm going to use that same piece of twine to tie around it. So I added a little bit of hot glue, gluing that twine into place and wrapping that tight. I think that the twine is going to keep the star together more than the hot glue did, because I'm going to need it to be slightly flexible to make this work to form the shape of the star. At the end, I found it a little bit easier just to glue the end of your twine rather than tying it off. For the next piece, I'm going to go on top. So I went straight across, I went down, and now this piece is going to go up. Again, I'm going on top. I add some hot glue, adding my wood to the top. And again, I estimated my angle the best that I could there. Tying off some twine and wrapping this side as well. If you follow the steps that I'm doing, you should be able to make this work, because again, the width of the diameter of the wood dowels did make it a little bit tricky trying to make everything touch and fit together, which is what I was trying to do here. So for this one, again, I stack on top, all of them so far. I've put my new piece on top. This one's going to go back down. So I hot glued that, tied that off. I found that if I wrapped it really tight and then hot glued the end of it, but adding a little bit of hot glue as I go really helped make this a little bit sturdier. And then gluing off the end, just trimming that off. And this was the tricky part, the last piece. Again, I'm going on top here for this piece, and I'm going to be going on top for the last piece. But making it touch is a little bit difficult there on the last one. But since we're going to tie it off, we'll have a little bit of flexibility. But first, we're going to glue and tie down this end. And you could use some colored string as well for the ends if you didn't want to use the jute twine. Like something blue or red would be really cute too for 4th of July. So for this one, I had to kind of angle it up a little bit to make that go back like that. And I hot glued it and tied it pretty much the same as all the others. Now, it did make it a little bit more 3D, and it's a little bit flexible at this point. A lot of my cross pieces don't touch either, which is to be expected to make this out of the different shapes like that. As you can see at this point, it's still pretty flexible, but I was able to glue at least 2 sets of them together to kind of make things stay exactly where I want. There and there. Those dowels touch, and I was able to hot glue those together, and it just made it a lot more stable. The next thing I'm going to do is just burn off any fuzzies from the jute twine with a lighter just to clean that up. And I'm not going to add anything else to this. It's going to be a leaner like that. And I think it turned out really cute. I'm so glad I decided to try this. It's a nice large star that's going to look great combined with some of my other 4th of July DIYs. Look how cute this turned out. Just 5 dowels from the Dollar Tree and a little bit of twine. I love how the Dollar Tree craft wood stains so beautifully with the antique wax by Waverly. It's definitely one of my favorite ways to display that. And I think it looks really good stained instead of painted. For the next DIY, I got this great little star cut out from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted to make it into a standing sign. I wanted like a chunky wood sign for the back, and these were a little bit too short sideways, so I'm going to pair 2 of them together. I'm just going to go to my saw and cut off one of those pallet board signs and add it to the other one to make it a larger sign that can still stand up on its own, but it's going to be large enough to be a great background for that star. I just attach it with hot glue, trying not to get too tight because I do want it to look like slatted boards. And since that gives me almost a black shadow in between the 2 boards, I tried to recreate that with a black Sharpie, like a fine tip Sharpie, to define the different areas between those panels as well for the board sign, just to make it look a little bit more cohesive. I love these stars. I was able to pick these up in red and blue at the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to take the wood beads and staples off the back there with a pair of pliers, so I just have that great wood cut out. It was a little bit fluffy the way it was cut there on the back, so I used a sanding sponge to try to take off any imperfections that you might be able to see when we attach this to the wood sign. And I'm also going to rough up this sign a little bit, but not too much. I liked the finish on that, so I don't need to stain it or anything like that. And I want to just glue the star simply onto the sign. Really easy. You could do more than one of these. I wonder if they have them in white, because I was able to pick them up in red and blue. But I think they're really pretty. Look at that great cutout. I just attach it with hot glue to my sign like that. And then I thought it was a little plain with just one star on there, so I thought I would add some more. These are the little wood-shaped stars from the Crafter Square at Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna use 4 of these. They also have a chunky star this year, like a wood star that you could use that's tiny too. Either one would work. I'm gonna use a makeup sponge and some white acrylic paint to paint those, just white, and I'm gonna do one in each corner. And look how much that brightened up the sign. I really think this made it a lot more festive. I'm just going to hot glue these around our star. You could do some of them blue if you wanted. That'd be cute too. For the red, white, and blue. But this is going to be a very simple little sign. It was so easy to make. And I love that it's a chunky wood. It can stand up on its own like that. The final step was just a little bit of distressing. I distressed the white stars with a little tiny bit of antique wax by Waverly. And then I'm going to distress the red star with a little bit of white acrylic. And then I do go in and follow that up with a little bit of antique wax by Waverly to make that look a little bit older and more vintage as well. But a fun DIY using these little star cutouts from the Dollar Tree, because we kind of have to use whatever they give us. And this is definitely one of the products that's not like a party supply. Really pretty, and I think that's really all it needs. It's going to be a great standing sign. You could use this just as decor, or you could use this even probably on a tier tray. I don't think it would be too big, but this is how mine turned out. I love the intricate cutout on that. I think that's really great and a really pretty option for $1.25 for a wood cutout heart. Isn't that so cute? I love how this turned out. I picked up a wood round from the Dollar Tree, and either I got lucky or they're making these thicker because they've always bowed a lot. Sometimes I've had to use 2 of them, but this one was really thick, so I only have to use 1, so that's awesome. I'm going to pair it with one of the little patriotic flag bandanas. I wanted to do a flag background on this, and as you can see, it is a little bit wrinkled from the way that the bandana was folded up. But I am going to give it a quick press, but first I'm going to cut off any excess material. I'm cutting it wider than I need, so I definitely have enough fabric to cover the entire wood round. And I actually moved my automatic heat press onto my craft station because I need to iron stuff all the time, so I think that really will come in handy. And so I just gave it a quick press, and now I am going to Mod Podge it onto the sign. I wanted to do something really patriotic with this one, and I thought I could design a bald eagle to go over the flag, and I absolutely love how this DIY turned out. Now, I do need quite a bit of Mod Podge on here because I am gluing fabric on, and I'm going to be attaching the eagle to that, so I want everything to be secure. I just laid my fabric on top and used a dry paper towel to go over that. Once it's dry, then I can cut off the excess material, and it didn't seem to fray or anything. The Mod Podge did a really good job sealing the edges here, and I just cut it with some sharp scissors as close as I could to the wood round. That is a perfect background. I love how that turned out, and I love the texture of the fabric. I'm using a Cricut weeder to poke the holes back through the fabric where the holes are for the hanger for the wood round, and then I can reattach the hanger. I am going to add a little hot glue to the tip just because it makes it a little bit easier to feed it through, especially when you cover it with fabric. And I like to do the knots on the front. I find that the Dollar Tree signs hang a little bit better that way. And so I'm just going to knot them in the front on both sides and adjust it to the height that I want. Now for the bald eagle head, I'm going to start with one of these foam pieces from the Dollar Tree. I liked the fact that it is a little bit beveled in the shape, and I was looking for kind of like a half circle shape for the head of the bald eagle. So I'm going to try to get that by cutting this in half. These do not cut fantastic, but I was able to use a pair of scissors here to cut it down in the middle. I probably should have used white though, because I want my bald eagle's head to be white, of course, and I don't want you to be able to see any of this green through. So you could use some of the white foam circles from the Dollar Tree, which I am going to use on this DIY as well. But for this one, I just went ahead and sealed it with Mod Podge first. That way it'd be easier to paint, because sometimes the foam items like this from the Dollar Tree that don't take paint very well. And then I went over the whole thing with some white acrylic paint, basically just to hide the foam in case you could see through it anywhere. And I want to place the head right here towards the center. I want to DIY a beak, have feathers for the head and partially for the body, kind of going off the sides. To make the beak, I'm using some of the Dollar Tree Model Magic. You can also get this at Dollar General for $1, so a little bit cheaper there than the $1.25. And I usually like to buy white because I can't usually find the specific color that I want. And I'm just going to try to shape an eagle's beak, a bald eagle beak. I probably don't need quite this much foam. I made it a little bit too big, but I just shaped it into the basic beak shape. And I'm going to try that on for size. I thought it was a little too big, so I'm going to make it a little bit skinnier and curve it like that. I was looking at a picture of a bald eagle, and they have a rather pointy little beak, so I also pointed it towards the end like that, and it's really easy. It's just like using Play-Doh, and it's going to dry into a hardened foam, and you can paint it and stuff like that, so I think this is going to work perfectly for the beak. And then I just used a pencil to poke some nostrils on the very top of the beak to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then I'm going to paint it. I have this yellow acrylic that I think is pretty close to what the beak of a bald eagle looks like. They have a yellow beak and they have yellow eyes. And I just painted all over. Since it's kind of a 3D piece, I painted the back and the front, just in case you can see it from the top or the sides or anything like that. I don't want any of the white to show through. And I just used one of those little foam stencil daubers from Dollar Tree to paint that. Now for the feathers, I'm going to be making them out of these burlap bags from the Dollar Tree, the faux burlap. I have lots of scrap ones because I craft with these all the time. So I'm just going to cut out some sheets of this. They cut great because they have a little plastic coating on the back. You can even paint them if you want, which is what we're going to do for this DIY, because I want white feathers and I want brown feathers. So I cut out 3 partial sheets that I had here. I ended up doing way too much of the white. I didn't need this many, but I guess I have some leftover white feathers if I need them for something else. I just took some white acrylic paint and a foam dauber and I'm going over the whole thing. If you have like a foam roller, they sell those at Dollar Tree. That would be a lot faster because I felt like I had to, kind of paint one section at a time, kind of drag it. But I went ahead and painted all 3 of these, but I probably could have gotten away with like two of these. And I am just going to simply cut out like little oval shapes, like little feathers. And I'm going to use one of these wood slices from the Dollar Tree for the shape that I want. You could really use anything. You're just going to want a stencil. And on the back of the painted burlap, I'm just using a chalk pencil from the Dollar Tree. And I am just simply drawing those on so I can cut those down to size. They don't all have to be perfect, but this is a great starting point. And having something to cut out a reference point like this made it a lot easier. So I'm just going to cut out a ton of these. And then I am going to start building the bald eagle. I've seen people make like bald eagle wreaths before, and they usually use like some expensive crafting products. I wanted to use something from Dollar Tree and I wanted to create something new. So I wanted it to be kind of like a sign, and the flag background is a perfect background for that, I think. So I have all of my white feathers painted and cut out. I can go ahead and attach my bald eagle beak here just using hot glue. And I also used my Cricut weeder to make a little crease here where the mouth would be, where the 2 parts of the beak come together, just to give it a little bit more detail. And now I was thinking, you know what? I need to do the body too. So what I'm going to do is I want to do brown burlap feathers for that as well. So I'm just going to cut out some more of this faux burlap. And this time, instead of paint, I'm going to use some Antique Wax by Waverly. I thought it would give me a really cool finish on this, but you could always use dark brown paint as well. I thought about leaving it the regular burlap color, but that's not the color of bald eagles. You really want a rich brown color. So again, I just used one of those stencil daubers from the Dollar Tree and gave that a quick painting. But same thing here on the back. I'm going to use that little wood slice as a stencil and get as many as I can on one sheet. and this was plenty. I just went ahead and cut these all out too, and we can start putting this bald eagle together. I noticed that if I just did the feathers here, it would really be a big transition between the head sticking out and the body. So I'm going to use some of the foam from the Dollar Tree. This time I'm using white. And I'm going to kind of sketch out what I want it to be. So I want it to be the body of the bald eagle. I want it to be kind of like that, to work around the head and have a flat back and like a flat chest, but also a little bit of an arch shape here at the top to fit with the head. And I don't really want it hanging off of the wood round at all. So I cut that a little bit shorter so it would fit well on there. And I also kind of shaved it down even a little bit more to make it a little bit more three-dimensional, maybe a little bit more here at the near the neck than the rest, as it slowly like tapers down a little bit. And then I attached it with hot glue. I'm going to start with the body first because I want the different feathers to kind of lay on top of each other. So I'm going to do this bottom row here, and I do 4 across. We'll cover the foam that I put on there for the body, and kind of having them arch out at the sides a little bit like that to give it a little bit more texture. Sometimes I glued the side of the foam as well to get it to kind of conform to the shape and cover up all of the foam. So I did 2 layers there to cover up most of the foam. For this bottom layer here, I did have to cut them to make sure they fit, and I just kind of worked them underneath. Now we can start working on the white part of our bald eagle. And I kind of like the shape of this. Again, I think maybe if you cut one of the foam circles in half, you would get a similar shape for a head. But I like the fact that it's a little smaller here on the top, and I can work with that with the white feathers. I was a little confused how I needed to do the feathers for the head, but for the bottom part here of the head, I just did what I did with the body, overlapping them like that in kind of a pattern. But when I got here to the top, I thought I really need to cover this top side of the foam. I don't want that to be visible. So I'll start here and just start kind of pairing them in, like the feathers flaring out from the top of the bird head. Slowly like that until I get to there where I kind of did it on the side and halfway on the head. And then here for the front, I want to cover up all the foam. And then we also need to construct an eye for the bald eagle. First I thought I was going to use a yellow wood bead from the Dollar Tree, but I didn't really like the look of it. So I'm actually going to DIY one. But I got everything covered with my feathers first. And I'm going to use that model magic that we used for the beak. And I just made a little ball of it and then flattened it on one side, kind of giving me that half bead shape. And once I get it exactly how I want it, I'm going to paint mine with that same color that we used for the beak. That's going to be perfect for an eagle eye, and it's the perfect scale. Once it's dry, you just use a black paint pen to make a little circle here for the center of the eye. And I want to pick that up without messing up any of the paint. It hasn't dried yet, but I haven't had any trouble when I've painted this before it's dried on other projects, so I think we'll be okay. I'm going to attach it with hot glue here to our little eagle head. And I want to give the feathers a little bit more of a three-dimensional look here, working around the eye as well. So I'm going to add some more feathers. First, I start here in the back of the head, having a few more come out here from the side, cutting them down if I need to, until that looks really balanced. And then I want to do a couple, one above and one below the eyes, but not really covering it, slightly overlapping it though. And so I just cut some of the feathers down to size so they would work perfectly. I've already got the top of the foam covered there, so I really need a custom size feather for this piece. But just slightly overlapping that eye just gives it a little bit more dimension. And then for the side piece, I actually work around the eye, cutting that one down, and then I cut another one smaller to go underneath of the eye. Just more feathers, more texture, and I absolutely love how this eagle turned out. Now to frame it out, I'm using some Dollar Tree rope. I think the brown rope would look really cute just to frame it out, give it a more finished appearance. And it's going to be another fun texture. We have the fabric from the bandana, we have the burlap from the eagle, and we can have some rope here along the edges. I'm going to start and stop behind or underneath of the bald eagle head here, so you won't be able to see where I start and stop. And just using hot glue, I'm going to adhere that all the way around the sign. I'm so glad I decided to try to give a bald eagle DIY a chance. I think it's a perfect patriotic DIY for the 4th of July. Really unique, something that is readily available, the items from the Dollar Tree. You should be able to find. And I'm always stockpiling those burlap bags because, as you can see, they are just so much fun to craft with. And here it is, our little eagle American flag sign. I love it. The last step is I just burned off any fuzzies on the rope there just using a ladder. And here is the final product. You can really kind of see the texture there from the flag background. And check out this cute little eagle. The beak turned out great. I think it's complete with nostrils and all. And I love the burlap leaves and the little bald eagle head and kind of neck area. Isn't that so cute? For the next 4th of July DIY, I wanted to take a Dollar Tree vase. This is what I would say is the medium size one. It's the one that you can get for $1.25. And a patriotic bandana from the Dollar Tree for some flag fabric. Now, this is gingham and stars, but still, I think, super cute for the 4th of July. And what I want to do is make this into a light up firecracker. In my first attempt, I tried to use the new plastic table runners they have from the Dollar Tree, but I tried adding the glue to the glass and the glue to the plastic, and neither way could I get that on there smoothly. So I decided to try a bandana. And what I want to do is just cut a strip of fabric that is the right height here to cover it. I want it to be covered with stars on one half and gingham on another half to give it a lot of color and fun. I want to cover the sides of the vase, and I also want to cover the bottom of it because it's going to be displayed upside down to make a firecracker. And I'm also going to make it light up because you have the inside of the vase, so that's really easy to do with some Dollar Tree twinkle lights. So I'm going to slightly overlap it, and I'm going to use some spray adhesive to try to attach it. This is the Elmer's spray adhesive. I think I got this at CVS. It's just a spray glue. I used to be able to find this at Dollar Tree, and I have not been able to find it there in a while. I'm going to do my finished edge up here, which is the bottom of the vase, which is the gingham, with the stars along the bottom. And just roll that around carefully. It is really sticky, so I tried to get it on there as quickly as I can, but also I want it to be as smooth as I can get it. So just using a paper towel, I'm trying to smooth that out as much as possible. And the adhesive, spray adhesive worked great for adhering it to the glass, but not so much for the overlap part. So I'm just going to use Mod Podge for that. And honestly, you could have used Mod Podge for the whole thing. You're really not going to be able to see it. My only concern with using fabric is I wasn't sure if you'd be able to see the lights through it, but I was surprised with how well the fabric let the light through. So just cutting off any excess fabric here at the bottom, and I pretty much got that covered as smoothly as I possibly can. With some of my leftover fabric, I'm going to do just the gingham here on top. I think that will fit perfectly in there with just one thing, and that will match the gingham on the top of the firecracker. I'm going to kind of sit it in the corner here using a Sharpie to lightly trace that out, making sure I don't get any of that onto the firework that I already did. And then I'm just going to simply cut out a circle for the top of our firecracker. I want to do a wick on it, and I want the firework to look like it is lit and it is sizzling, which is the effect I want to go for. So I am just going to add this to the top. I kind of lined it up where my gingham makes sense with the gingham that is on the sides. It actually lined up pretty well. And then I'm just going to use Mod Podge for this part so I can get it right where I want it and just use Mod Podge all around. And you could do that for the entire vase. Using any of the patriotic bandanas from the Dollar Tree, I think you're going to have good success with this. And I just laid this right here on top. My circle was not a perfect circle, but it did a pretty good job of covering everything up. And I'm just making sure all of my fabric is secure to my firecracker. Since I have the top of the firecracker closed like this, I will have to just add a rope for a wick right on top of that, but it doesn't need to be super strong, so I think that will work. I'll just cut a piece of the Dollar Tree rope, about 3 inches, 3 or 4 inches, I'd say. And I'm just going to attach that with some hot glue right here in the center. I also want it to look lit. So what I did was I bought some of these little pom-pom bows from the Dollar Tree, and I chose white because I wanted to look lit. So like a lit wick is what I was thinking. But they're a little too big. So I cut mine down with some wire cutters to about half the size. I think that's really all I need here for the top of my firecracker. And I just attached that with hot glue to the top of the wick. Now, it did kind of want to go over to the side, which I like the look of it going over to the side, but I really didn't think it was going to be strong enough. So I'm going to reinforce mine with some of the wired jute from the Dollar Tree. I just cut down a piece as long as the wick, and I'm going to simply hot glue that along the back of it. You won't be able to see it there. The jute will blend in with the rope, but it's going to give it structure, and then I can kind of bend it exactly the way I want it without worrying about it completely falling over. Again, I do like it bent off to the side a little bit, just not too much. To light up our firecracker, I'm using the battery operated fairy lights from the Dollar Tree. These are the ones that just require two AA batteries, and they have like 10 white LED lights on them, which I think is going to be plenty to light up this firecracker. And I can just pick up the vase, turn them on and off, so they'll be really easy to get to for my patriotic decor. I always love things that I can make light up. So I'm just going to unwind these and kind of work them in a spiral fashion so I can just kind of place these up inside the firecracker vase just like this. And see, even in the bright daylight, you can really see the lights through it. So it's exactly what I was looking for. Let me give you a close-up view of how our exploding firework turned out. I love those bows. I think they're perfect for the 4th of July. And here's a little close-up view of what the firecracker looks like during the day. As you can see, it's really pretty, even when it's not lit up. The star fabric is a little different. It's blue on blue. And of course, the red and white gingham's a little different than the stripes, but I think it's perfect for 4th of July. I like to mix up my patterns. And let me show you what this looks like lit up. Look how bright this is. Isn't this so cool? It was such an easy DIY. I had all of the supplies on hand, and so I think that this is going to be a really fun part of my patriotic decor this year. What do you guys think about this one? For the next patriotic DIY, I wanted to see if I could make a Liberty Bell. Now, my husband and I used to live in Philadelphia, so we have definitely seen the Liberty Bell a couple of times, and I wanted to try to recreate it out of a terracotta pot from the Dollar Tree. These are the medium-sized ones, the ones that come in a 2-pack, and I want to see if I can try to make it look like a bell. Another item you could use is a plastic bell from the Christmas aisle at Dollar Tree if you have any in your stash. I probably do, but I definitely did not want to go through my Christmas stash. So I'm going to try it with a terracotta pot, and it is a very like metallic patina finish. I thought black would be a perfect undertone, so I just went over the entire outside of the terracotta pot with black, kind of working sideways there to give some lines around it, because that's kind of how the Liberty Bell looks, and I think that's going to be a perfect first coat. For the clapper thing inside the bell, I'm using a knob I found from the Dollar Tree. It is like a crystal ball, but it's a perfect size. So I'm going to remove the hardware on this, and I think I will like retain the little nut, putting that back on there. That'll help me be able to attach that to hang it inside my bell. And I'm going to paint it too because I want that to look like metal as well. And I really didn't expect this bell to work, but in the end it does. So I was really impressed with how this turned out. So black for both of those. I'm going to set those aside and we can start working on the base. Now, if you have a Dollar Tree that has these on sale right now, my Dollar Trees have the galvanized metal letters on sale for 25 cents. So they must be getting discontinued. So be sure to stock up. I'm going to spell out the word Liberty, and I'm going to add it to one of these little wood panel signs from the Dollar Tree, a little wood plank sign. I wanted to try to use the spray adhesive to attach these because they're always a little bit of a pain to try to hot glue on. So I just sprayed a layer of that glue on there, set those on there, let it dry, and then I went over it with another coat. And it actually worked, so win-win. Now for the Liberty Bell, it's held up with like 2 poles on each side. So I'm going to try to recreate that with some of these large dowels from the Dollar Tree. These are the ones that come in the 2-pack, nice and thick and sturdy. I'm just going to stain mine with some antique wax by Waverly, just giving 1 coat to both and wiping off any of the excess. Just with a paper towel, I just want a nice warm finish on these. And I'm going to be cutting these down, of course, because they are a little tall, but I find it a little bit easier to stain them before I cut them down. I wanted to use the wood sign as a base because it will be nice and strong. And then I could have a dowel coming up each side of the sign, and then maybe one going across to hold the weight of the bell, like that. Now, it does have a decorative yoke that I think might be the original yoke for the Liberty Bell. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try to recreate that as well. So I'm just going to find the middle here of our dowel and cut this directly in half using my miter scissors. I love the miter scissors. I got these on Amazon. I do have them linked in my Amazon shop in the description of today's video. They work so great for cutting things like this from the Dollar Tree. I probably do need to replace the blade on mine. It's getting a little rusty in my Florida garage. I just attached mine with hot glue. If you wanted to put screws or nails in the other side and drive that up in there, it would be stronger. But I didn't really want to drill anything out or get any screws involved, so I just attached mine with hot glue and hope for the best. I also want one of the dowels to go straight across, and I want it to be long enough where it can sit on those. So it's going to be pushing down on those dowels to hold the weight of the bell. And the reason I had to do this piece is because I'm going to be using foam for the decorative yoke part of it. And that's not really going to be a functional piece. So I did need something strong like the wood that could hold the weight of the bell. So that's what it looks like. Again, you could reinforce those parts with hardware as well. Really didn't expect my bell to be so functional, so hopefully nobody breaks it playing with it. Probably me. Now, to make that old looking yoke that's on the top of the Liberty Bell, I'm going to try to carve it out of some floral foam from the Dollar Tree. So I just got the long rectangular piece, and I am just using my pool noodle knife here to try to cut this down. I want a piece that is skinnier than the dowels that will fit inside, and then I want it to have like this arched shape here at the top, like I saw in the pictures. I'm going to actually just sketch that out with a Cricut weeder, and my foam is just worked away. This soft foam from the Dollar Tree is so easy to mold like that, and I think that is exactly what I'm looking for. I do want it to be cleaned up and a little bit thinner, and I just kind of mold it until I am happy with the size. I'm going to seal this and paint this and try to make it look like really old dark wood like I saw in the pictures. But for texture, it needs a little bit of wood texture, so I gave that with the Cricut weeder. I just carved a wood grain into it, and I love how that effect turned out because it really reminds me of how the wood looks on the Liberty Bell. Then I seal it with some Mod Podge so I can paint it easier. Otherwise, I have a hard time getting paint to stick to, especially to the soft foam like this from the Dollar Tree. So once it's dried, I went over it with some brown acrylic paint. Not quite as dark as I want it to be, but I wanted to use a couple different browns together to really make this look old and cool. And so I just paint everywhere, the top, bottom, inside, outside, because it's going to be a standalone piece like this. Really, you want it to be pretty from all sides. And then once that's dry, I went over it with some Antique Wax by Waverly to give me that really deep brown tone that I was looking for. But the carving the wood grain on there just worked perfect. And of course, this is going to be just decorative for my Liberty Bell. All of the weight's really going to go on that wood dowel. Now, our black paint is dry on our flower pot. So I went over it with some metallic gray. I thought to give it like a metallic look, which I liked, but that's not really how the Liberty Bell looks. It's more of a bronze, but this did give me a good base for the metallic color, but I end up covering most of this up. But the black on the bottom is definitely a good idea. And I went over the little clapper of our bell as well. Then I went in with some gold metallic since that really wasn't working for me. I got the gold metallic paint at Dollar Tree actually, and that's a little too gold. So then I mixed the gold metallic together with the black, and it gave me a lot closer to that brass color that I was looking for the Liberty Bell. So I just kind of played with it until I got the perfect shade, and I'm going to paint all over the flower pot to make it look like a bell. I was really impressed with how well the flower pot worked for this project. I wasn't sure since it's not a perfect bell shape, but it really works. I'm going to go over the clapper with that same gold, black, metallic mixture there and get everything good and painted. The more gold added to it, you're going to get a little bit more of a bronze finish like that. And again, I am using bristled brush and kind of going side to side to get all those great lines and textures, just to make it look like a really old bell was what I was going for. Now this is the structure here. The yoke is going to be right here on the top. I just really need to attach it. Again, this part's just decorative for me. I just put hot glue on the top of the foam and glue it to the bottom of that top dowel. And I'm really glad I added that piece. I think it adds a fun detail, makes it look a little bit more authentic. Now to start putting the bell together, I'm going to need a little bit of twine. I'm using the twine from Walmart. It's a little bit thicker than the twine from Dollar Tree. And I cut a nice long piece of that. And look at that beautiful finish I've got going on. But I can't forget the crack here on the Liberty Bell, right? So I'm using just a black Posca paint pen. And I think it goes a little something like this over to the side. I did make the crack a little bit more obvious by going over it with a second coat, but trying to make it look like a crack as well, which is a really fun detail. Then I'm going to feed the twine here through the hole in the flower pot, which worked out perfectly. Making sure to leave enough to work with here. I am going to need to attach that to the clapper. So I just tied that off to the cabinet nod right there at the bottom, hot gluing that on and wrapping that around the screw of that, using that little bolt to come on there to help, keep the twine in place, hot gluing everything together. And that's all going to be hidden inside the bell, so you won't be able to see that part. And then I need to kind of adjust it where it will hang properly. I'm going to need to knot it so it won't go all the way through. So I needed to knot it quite a few times because right now it's hanging out way too far. I want it to be a functional bell, but a little bit obvious, but not that much. So I tied mine, I think, a total of 4 times to get the perfect length. And I was really surprised to see that it actually works like a bell. So that's really cool. Now I have all this excess twine on here. I'm going to use that to tie that to the wood dowel here on the top for structure. But I'm also going to tie that around a couple of times because that is how the Liberty Bell looks. So I'm going to use that extra twine for that. So I just knot off the first one and then start wrapping it around just in a pattern that works. I'm going to use most of this twine. And again, I do want it to hang and dangle above the base there. And I think that is perfect. I just hot glue down the end, trying to make sure that everything is centered and burn off any fuzzies from my rope with a lighter. And this is what our Liberty Bell looks like so far, but I thought it needed some red, white, and blue. So the edge of the sign is unfinished here for the base, so I'm going to give it a pop of patriotism with this great ribbon I found from the Dollar Tree. It's red, white, and blue, like flag pattern, and I just glue that all the way around our Liberty Bell, even on the back, since it is kind of a 3-dimensional piece. And that really added a little pop of color to it that I really think that it needed. And I think this ribbon is perfect for like a Philadelphia theme here for our 4th of July. And that looks pretty good. The only other thing I wanted to do was lightly distress it. So I used a little antique wax by Waverly and I distressed that white sign. I probably could have done that at the beginning. It might have been a little bit easier, but I just wanted it to look old and rustic, something that would be a good base for the Liberty Bell and not quite so white and perfect down there. And so I just went over it with a slight distress and then maybe a little stippling here and there to give it a light distress. And I also gave a very light distress with ivory on the stained wood just to weather that a little bit, make that look a little bit older as well. And I think that's all this project needs. I'm really happy with how it turned out. My very own little Liberty Bell, perfect for a patriotic theme, very creative. I haven't seen anybody else make one of these. And so I thought I would try to come up with something really cool. Isn't that so cool and unique? I love it. I love the fact that the bell actually works too. At first I thought maybe I can make it into a wind chime, but I really wanted it to look authentic. So I wanted the poles, I wanted the yoke at the top, and I think those little details really add a lot. And now let's switch gears a little bit and do some coastal patriotic Dollar Tree DIYs. These are all for the 4th of July, all with a little bit of some coastal colors and fun. Enjoy. For the first one, I'm going to be using some scrap wood I had in my garage. You could always use Dollar Tree craft wood for this. If you can find, just the right sizes, you're just going to want it to be the same width. I had 2 longer pieces, about 2 feet, and then I cut another piece down into 3 shorter pieces, all the same length. And what we're going to be making is a patriotic shutter, but I also want to give it a coastal touch. So I think I want the top section to be like that because I want it to be a little stars and stripes for the flag. So I want the top part to be separate. So this section is going to be a little higher than I would normally do it if I were going to make a shutter. And we're going to be making a popsicle stick shutter. It turned out so cute. So I just affixed my first 3 pieces of wood with some Gorilla Glue hot glue, and then I reinforce it with a couple of staples. And this is the back side of the wood. Normally, when you buy craft wood, or I just had some scrapped wood, you'll usually have one side that's a lot better looking than the other side. So keep that in mind when you're putting yours together. If you didn't want such a heavy duty shutter, which I am making here, you could also do this with like the 5-gallon paint stir sticks. That they would probably be long enough to form the structure. Now I did have a little bit of gapping here between my boards, probably because I didn't use wood glue, but I'm not planning to stain this, so I can just use some Dollar Tree spackle to fill up any of the gaps before I go in and paint it. I want the frame of my coastal patriotic shutter to look like driftwood, so I'm going to paint it in a finish that looks a little bit like that. But I wanted to make sure that my gaps there were not too obvious. It does seem really secure and heavy duty. I think this was just some scrap wood that my husband had in the garage, and he never used it. And so I cut it into some pieces that were like 2 feet and 1 foot pieces, and I've been using them a lot, but I also do use the craft wood from Dollar Tree a lot too. If you can find the longer pieces, those are my favorite, and the thicker pieces like this. So to make it look like driftwood, I mixed a little bit of ivory acrylic paint with some antique wax by Waverly, and I'm going to go over the top, the inside, and the outside because you'll be able to see that because we're going to be building the shutter from behind. So this gives you that perfect tone for driftwood. I will go over it with some more with a little bit more antique wax by Waverly to give it a little bit more wood grain coming through, but I really like this look, especially when I have some wood that's like a little bit more yellow like this instead of staining it. And since I did have to use the spackle painting it, it's definitely recommended because the stain's not going to stick to it itself. And that looks pretty good. I think I've got pretty good coverage. I just give it a quick dry, and then using one of those little chunky brushes from the Dollar Tree, I'm going to lightly drag some antique wax by Waverly, and I'm doing it with the grain of the wood. So for those 3 pieces, I just go across and blend it with a dry paper towel to take off any excess. I don't want to remove too much of it since I am doing a very light distress. And then I do the same thing here for both sides. So my plan is the top part, I want to do a starfish in that section, and then I will use the different pieces of the shutter to make flag stripes to go all the way down. And it turned out so cute. These are the popsicle sticks that I'm using. These are from Walmart. So these are the giant wooden craft sticks. They're really inexpensive. I pick up a lot of my popsicle sticks from Walmart because they seem to have a better selection, especially of larger ones like this. So I'm laying them out side by side, but I know that I'll need more. What my plan was is just to do that and then throw another one. So I threw an extra one for that section and an extra one for the left section. But I did end up needing, I think, 3 more for the bottom one. So keep that in mind when you're organizing yours. And then I am going to just alternate. So half of those are going to be red, half of those are going to be white. So what I have to do is paint all of these. That's going to be definitely something I want to do in advance. And I'm just going to do an ivory for the white instead of a bright white. I think it's going to go well with this. And my color scheme for most of these DIYs today is going to be red, white, and turquoise. So I think that the ivory goes really well with that color scheme. And I like to mix up my colors for 4th of July sometimes. Instead of doing the navy or the royal blue, doing more of a beachy turquoise color. But for the ivory, it really kind of soaks it up. So I did do 2 coats on all of those popsicle sticks. And you don't really have to go all the way to the end because you're going to be trimming those down. But I just paint one color at a time. This one's going to be flag red with acrylic paint. I like to use a sponge when I'm painting something small like this, either the makeup sponges, which they used to have at Dollar Tree, but I've been having to get those at Amazon lately, or these little stencil daubers from Dollar Tree. It just works really well. Seems to work better for me than their foam brushes sometimes. And so I've been using those a lot more lately, and I've been finding them a lot more in my stores. So I painted half of those ivory, half of those a bright flag red, and then the ones for the top, I'm going to do turquoise. So this is just turquoise acrylic. I think by Delta was the brand on this one. And I'm going to go over this part. I do have a starfish that I have left over from the shore living line last year at Dollar Tree. And you could really use any kind of starfish that you can find. They used to have so many different kinds at Dollar Tree the past 3 or 4 years there. But this year they left us high and dry. So hopefully you have something in your stash. So I'm going to start here with the back of our shutter frame. And I'm going to use the wood dowels from the Dollar Tree to create that beveled effect of the shutters. So I'm going to start one here for the blue section by attaching that with hot glue. This was the perfect length for what I was working with. And then I'll go ahead and do one here too. And that will give the popsicle stick something to lean against. And so I did reinforce those a little bit with some extra hot glue. And again, we're going to do the turquoise color here at the top. So it is plenty long. I do need to trim it down. I want to trim the rounded edges off the popsicle sticks, and I want to make sure that it's not too long. And so I went ahead and cut all of mine down here so that I'll be ready to attach these. And I want them all to be about the same size. I just want to make sure that you can't see any of these from the front. And I've wanted to make a shutter like this for a long time. I'm so glad that I finally did it. It turned out so cute. And it's so subtly 4th of July. I love it. So I'm going to lean it against the wood dowel. So I attached some hot glue to that. I also did some to the end so I could reinforce that. But honestly, most of the glue is going between the dowel and the popsicle stick. Gluing the sides was a little bit iffy, but I did try. And so I'm going to need a dowel for each one to get that effect. That slatted look that you have with the beveled shutter. And so I hot glue the dowel on there just like I did before to the popsicle stick, also attaching a little bit of hot glue on each side and also on top of the dowel. And I can attach my next piece. That looks perfect. That's definitely the effect I'm going for. And so I'm just going to repeat that. So you're going to need a lot of dowels if you're going to make a large shutter like I am. You could always do this on a smaller scale as well with some of the smaller popsicle sticks. Since I wanted to make such a large shutter, that's one reason why I'm using the giant popsicle sticks from the Dollar Tree. But they're definitely one of my favorites to craft with. So again, I'm just using the turquoise color on these, and I do one of the dowels in between each piece, and I think that I have enough there to finish this off. So the one extra piece was definitely enough for here. So I add one more dowel, and that's going to pretty much cover everything. Again, gluing it on the sides, I did, but again, I don't think that's really what held it on. I think that the dowel is what holds the different pieces on. And look at that cool shuttered look. I absolutely love this project. Now for the red and white stripes, I'm going to do the same thing, just cutting the rounded parts off, and then I'll cut these all down about the same size. I went ahead and did it all at once to get that out of the way, and we can start assembling this. I did make sure that I had enough of the wooden dowels. At first, when I thought that I could do that, I didn't know I was going to have to put a dowel in between each one, but it was definitely necessary to get that bevel look. So I just cut all of my red and white stripes down, and I do have to add a few more you'll see here in a minute. And I'm just going to start alternating those. So I start with red. I always like to start with red if I can. And I usually like it on the top and the bottom when I'm doing a flag design. And I'm just going to start attaching these exactly like I did before. So alternating red and ivory and go all the way down our shutter. Painting and hot gluing this together was probably the most time consuming parts of this project, but It's so cool. It turned out just amazing, and it's something that I'm definitely going to want to use in my decor every year. That's when I realized I don't think I gave myself enough popsicle sticks to cover this with that bevel look, so I'm going to add a few more stripes here at the bottom. I just need to paint those and attach those just like I did before. When I get down to the very bottom, I do want to make sure everything is covered here, so I did make sure to overlap it almost to the bottom. And then I used a couple of staples to reinforce that there on the back for the bottom popsicle stick. And look at this really cool effect. I did a pretty good job of not getting any hot glue on anything there in the front, so that looks cool. This is the starfish I'm going to use. It is the starfish from the wood beads from last year. I bought so many of these little ceramic like pieces. They're so cool. I guess they're probably like a ceramic resin of some type. They do have a hole in them because they were on the wood beads, so I'm just going to fill that up with a little bit of spackle, and I'm going to give it a little bit of an ivory tone too. It was more of a white, so I just use a sponge dauber there to paint that ivory, and we're going to attach it here to the blue part for the star part of our flag. And I did have to use quite a bit of hot glue for this to try to find the connection because the shape is kind of odd to glue something to the shutters. But I just added enough hot glue to make that stick and let that dry for a little bit. And this is how it turned out. Isn't this so cool? I love the beauty on this. It's just very subtle 4th of July with the blue and white stars, the red and white stripes. But I love this so much. I might make one that's just coastal that I can use anytime. I made mine just to be a leaner. You could always hang yours on the wall if you like, but I kind of like the leaning effect of this sign, and I think it's really fun. If you're enjoying today's DIYs, be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more DIYs. For the next DIY, I'm going to use one of the green wreath forms from the Dollar Tree. And I have one of these sand dollars left over from the Shore Living line last year at Dollar Tree too. It is like a wooden wall charm. Really, you could use about anything. You're just going to want something coastal to hang down in the middle of your little mini wreath. Now, I am going to paint mine with just a tan color. I think this is Beachcomber's Beige because I'm going to be using a white burlap on this, and I don't want the green to come shine through the holes in the burlap. So I just went over the one side with one coat, and I'm just giving it a really simple paint. Just enough to mask the green is what I'm going for. And what I want to do is make this look like a little coastal 4th of July like life buoy using white burlap, red burlap, and then I want to do blue and white starfish for the stars on the sand dollar in between. Now, if you had like a wooden sailboat or anything that is going to fit scale wise inside this, I think anything coastal you could add some stars to and make it really cool. For the front part, I did go over it with a couple of coats of the tan paint to make sure that you can't see the green through it. And this is what we're going to use to form the life buoy. I got this red burlap like ribbon at Dollar Tree the other day. I think that's perfect. They had red and navy, I think probably for 4th of July, and also some of this white burlap for the 4th of July. And I really wanted white burlap ribbon, but I don't have any that's white. And I want to do red and white flag stripes is what I want the life buoy to kind of look like. And so I definitely need it to be like a white or an ivory color. So I just measured how wide my burlap ribbon was, and I pulled a strand of the burlap. It makes this great little path here, and it is definitely the best way to cut burlap, and it just gives you a little path so you know exactly where to cut it so you don't cut across the different rows. And I just want simple burlap. I know the other one has wires on it, which is not really necessary for what we're doing. And so I'm just going to cut enough of the ivory. I basically want to cover the entire little mini wreath with the ivory first, and then we can go back and add the red burlap to it for the different parts of the life buoy. And this is such a cute little wreath. You could do it for your door. You could hang this on the wall since it's kind of small. Really cute and very subtle for a patriotic DIY. So I just cut enough of the burlap to get us started. I did have to cut more. And I basically want to wrap this. So I'm just going to start here on the back, hot gluing that to the foam. It is foam, these foam wreaths from the Dollar Tree, but you know, they really hold up pretty well to hot glue. They don't sizzle like a lot of the foam pieces do. And I'm going to slightly overlap as I kind of have the arch of the wreath form. And I want to make sure my seams are all in the back. So I'm going to cut that a little shorter and then just hot gluing one piece of the burlap ribbon that we made to the next piece. I can continue wrapping that, but all of the unsightly seams will be on the back where you won't be able to see them. And I'm just going to continue that all the way around. Now, I thought I cut a good amount of burlap, but you really need a lot of it when you're wrapping something like this. So definitely going to have to cut more. I don't really want to add the red separately. I want to put the red over the top of it. So I want everything to be covered with it. And I love a burlap wreath. I love using the burlap rolls from the Dollar Tree. They make great wreath forms. But again, I wanted white on this one, so I was glad to find some white burlap from the Dollar Tree. I wish they had even more colors. That would be fantastic. But I just continue that ribbon, and it's easier to start and stop as you're doing it, so that way you know all of your seams will be right where you want them because you can trim the fabric down. So I think that is perfect. I can cover up the little part that's not covered there with some of the red burlap. And it's not really as wide as I would like, so I'm actually going to wrap it around a couple of times so I can have 4 of the straps for the life buoy or life ring, and they'll all be red. So it'll kind of look like red and white flag stripes is what I was thinking, the same color. So I'm just going to cut 4 pieces of that burlap ribbon down to size and then put this on. I want to glue it a little bit at an angle so that I can wrap it. Another thing you could do if you wanted to make it wider is just wrap it straight around twice. But I just went ahead and did the same piece and wrapped it around. Now I was forgetting something really important here. I did want to put rope around the outside of it like a life buoy has, and also an important hanger for this one. So I did glue that one on before I remembered the rope. So I'm going to have to go back and add that. I started to put the second one on like straight across. And that's when I remembered, oh, yeah, I want to put some rope on this. And so, what I'm going to use for the rope part is some of the brown rope from the Dollar Tree. I think this is a thinner one, which works well for the scale of this wreath since it's not really big. I've made larger versions of the life buoy, and I've even made a patriotic one before too for my front door with a paper mache starfish on it. It turned out pretty cool. So using my heat gun, I am going to soften that hot glue so I can go ahead and put my rope in, the one that I already closed off, but that's okay. I just put that in there and then re-hot glue that on the back, and no harm, no foul. And now I can continue that rope all the way around. I did want to go opposite to the other side so I can kind of get my spacing somewhat even. I want to do like 4 quadrants of it, but I also want to have a little bit of extra rope stick out in each section so I don't pull it tight. I leave a little bit of loose rope there before I glue the second part of the ribbon on. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to continue that. I need to do the red section on the other 2 sides and finish off the rope. So about halfway here with the rope, I'm going to go ahead and do this section, wrapping it around twice. And I'm not really gluing the rope on at all. I am just putting it inside the ribbon where I can actually pull it if I need to adjust it. But I also want it to be stiff enough to kind of stand open like that when it's hanging on the wall. So for the last piece, I just glued the 2 pieces of rope together so they would be a solid piece, really easy to hide behind the ribbon, and wrapped my 4th piece of the red ribbon around for our red and white flag stripes. Gonna hang it probably like this, and I want to make sure that the rope does stay in place. So I did glue the rope, but only here for the hanger, and just gluing that to the burlap ribbon, just so that I'll stay in place. And then I want the sand dollar to hang down in the middle of the little life buoy, just like this. At first, I liked the rope that was on here, so I tried to save it, but I probably should have taken it off before I started painting it because there's no way I could paint this without getting paint on the twine there. And I am painting this with turquoise all over with a sponge. It's a really pretty wood starfish, so cute. And again, originally I was thinking I wanted to do a sailboat in there, but I didn't really have any sailboats the right size, so I think a sand dollar is going to be cute too. I want to do lots of variety with the coastal items today, and hopefully you have some shore living still in your stash like I do. I'm so disappointed. I really hope they bring it back next year. Hopefully, we've complained enough. I complained so much that I thought I was going to just be banned from Dollar Tree. But I painted that all over, even on the inside there of the little slots. And then I'm going to do starfish pattern on here for our stars. By starfish, I just mean a star with like rounded edges. I thought that would make it look a little bit more like a starfish, maybe. And I'm doing it with my white Posca paint pens. And I did it like right in the middle of the star, even though that doesn't really line up with where the hanger is on that. I realized afterwards, but that's okay. I want to stagger the starfish all over like the stars are on a flag. And I also have to work around the parts of the sand dollar to see what kind of fits. I used a fine point white paint pen at first, and then I'll go back over it with a little bit more paint for the second coat to really make that pop. I do want it to look a little bit distressed, but I do want the white to really kind of pop against the turquoise color. So I think that looks pretty good. Now we can just hang that in between our little flag stripes. Buoy, and I just take some twine. I'm using some thicker twine. That's the twine from Walmart. It is pretty similar to what was on there before, and I'm just going to actually loop it around the wreath form like that. I think it will hang perfectly like that, but because of how the hanger is on the sand dollar, and I just tie that around. I don't want it to be super obvious that it's knotted though, so I'm going to glue that knot here to the back so you don't see that. It doesn't really take away from anything, and have our little starfish sand dollar in the middle. So cute and very subtle for coastal 4th of July, but I love it. I love the colors. And look at all the fun textures with the different colors of burlap for the red and white flag stripes. We have the rope, we have the blue with white stars, but using turquoise instead, and the sand dollar. Very, very coastal, which I really love. I think I'm going to hang this like maybe on the door to my garage since it's kind of a smaller wreath. It's not really, I don't think, large enough for my front door. Now for the next DIY, I thought we could make a little beach chair. I'm using the wood dowels from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use, for the flag material, I'm going to use flag stripes from a little head and neckwear that I found at the Dollar Tree. You never know where you're going to find stars and stripes, but there's so many different materials you can use them for. Now, I wanted to cut these in half, and I reluctantly measured. I almost didn't. And I am just going to cut 2 pieces in half and then use the longer dowels for the sides. I want to create 2 rectangles, and I want to put them together to make like one of those fold up beach lounge chairs. The ones that are made out of wood, kind of the classic style. But I don't want it to be really intricate. It's not going to have a lot of braces or anything like that. I really want these 2 main parts to fit together. And so I just need to attach them. I add a little hot glue on the end of the dowels, and I'm gluing a piece onto the top and the bottom, forming a 90-degree angles there, hopefully. And then I will glue the other piece to the other side. I want my frames to almost be interlocked so that I don't have to worry about fitting one over another one, or since I cut them exactly the same size, maybe I shouldn't have, but too late. I did one, and then for this one, I'm going to go ahead and attach the 2 pieces to it, the top and the bottom, for this little rectangle. And then I'm going to interlock it into this one before I add the final 4th piece. That way, you'll understand here in a minute what I'm doing. I want to put the 4th piece on like this while they're interlocked. And so like one side will be on the left and one will be on the right, and I won't have to worry about their being the same width. Like this is kind of the structure of one of those beach lounge chairs, where this part here in the front is going to be the seat, and then the part there in the back is going to be the back. So you can kind of adjust that to whatever you think looks good. And then I'm going to simply use a little bit of hot glue to get those started. And then what I'm going to do is wrap that with twine to make it stronger. So I'm gluing this piece over and attaching it to the other one. Kind of like crisscross. It's like a folding chair, but it's not going to be folding. And you could do some more braces and stuff like this. I thought I was going to need to, but it actually turned out pretty sturdy as is, and so I think it's going to work. While my hot glue is still hot, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping some twine around, so that will be hot glued on there as well, and just knotting that off first before I start wrapping that. And I think that the jute twine is just a little bit more decorative than like a zip tie or something like that. It's going to go with the coastal vibe of this chair, and it's going to make it a lot stronger than just a little dot of hot glue here and there. So I just wrap that around, and I'm going to do the same thing here to the other side. And I also want to make like a beach umbrella. I want to do a full like little beach theme, but I also want it to do with like our turquoise, white, and red with patriotic stripes. So I did the same thing here with the other side with the twine, just wrapping that around. I did wrap a little bit more on one side than the other, so I do go back and add a little bit more twine to the other side just to balance it out, but it definitely made my little chair a lot stronger. For the fabric, I'm using that head and neckwear flag set that you see there. For the fabric, I wanted to do a red and white flag stripe for that for the seat of the chair. But first, I just burned off any fuzzies there from my twine. This worked out really well. It was a really nice fabric. As you can see here, I will definitely be able to use this for coastal crafting. You can also use like the chair covers, the bandanas. There's lots of options for red and white stripes. I really like the feel of this fabric. I think I can fit maybe 2 red stripes and 2 white stripes. So I'm just going to cut it vertically like that into a piece that's going to be long enough to wrap around the dowels slightly and be able to attach that. I kind of want to cut off any red there just to clean that up a little bit. So I just have 2 solid red and 2 solid whites. So I want to loop it, but I also want to droop it down a little bit like the chair shape should be. I don't want it to be too long, too much fabric. So I did trim it down a little bit, and now we can put this little beach chair together. This was so fun. This would be really cute too on a tier tray if you just wanted to do the chair itself. But I'm going to do a whole beach scene on mine, of course. I kind of kept adding to this project. I put some hot glue here on my fabric and just glue that to the dowel for the bottom part of the chair, and then loop it around here at the top, again, letting it fall down a little bit to create the chair shape. I still think I have it a little bit too long, so I'm going to trim that down a little bit more before I attach that, and just attach that with hot glue as well. That's really the final step on this chair. If you wanted to add some more braces to make it a little bit stronger, you could, but I'm really going to have something very lightweight sitting in the beach chair, so I think that that is going to be perfect. What I want to have sitting in the chair is a starfish. This is one of the shore living starfish from the Dollar Tree. I think that would be cute. Have him laying out in the sun. But really, any starfish, even a real one, would look really cute. And then for the beach umbrella, I'm using this little umbrella. This is like a table umbrella, but you can make this into a beach umbrella for sure. It is red and white stripes already, but as you can see, it looks like a toy because it is a toy from the toy aisle at Dollar Tree. So it's made out of this cheap, shiny looking plastic. And I want to make this look pretty and part of the decor. So what I'm going to do is paint the entire thing white first because I want this to be a turquoise beach umbrella that we can add some starfish stars to kind of go with my theme for the 4th of July. But definitely it's going to require a lot of paint. I had to do a couple colors of white to really tone down that red to be able to give me something to work with for the turquoise. And I'm not going to use the actual little stand for the umbrella either. I'm going to replace that with some wood to go with the wood vibes of the little beach chair. And I think I got a pretty good primer base going there with the white paint. And the acrylic paint kind of dries like kind of a chalky. You can also paint it with chalk paint if you want. I like to use acrylic because it's cheaper. These little bottles, especially the apple barrel ones, are so cheap. And I get those on Amazon with free Prime. So that is a really convenient way to get them. Way easier than going to Walmart, but they also have them there. So again, I'm using the turquoise paint and just going over the inside. This covers really well now that we have the white canvas underneath covering up all of the red and white stripes and stuff that were on there. And so this is probably only going to require 1 coat of the turquoise to brighten this up. And I want to put this together like a beach scene. At first, I thought maybe I could attach the little beach umbrella to the chair, but it wasn't super sturdy. So, what I ended up was making a base, kind of tying the whole thing in together. Once I get it painted, I'm also going to paint the starfish that turquoise color too. Why not bring in a little fun on them? And these little plastic starfish from the Dollar Tree paint really well. I have such a stash of these because I've bought them like the last 3 years at Dollar Tree. So I definitely have plenty of those to craft with. For the starfish, I'm just going to put one on each section of the beach umbrella. And it's really just kind of a star with like a little bit of rounded edges if I can to kind of give it that starfish look. It might look more like stars than starfish, but hey, I tried. I find that with stars, it's almost easier just to paint them on yourself with a paint pen like this than getting the Cricut involved, especially when you're working like on a rounded edge like this. And when I was painting before that kind of intricate area, it's easier to kind of paint them on. Now, I wanted something a little bit skinnier than the dowel. It was too fat to fit here in this, so I'm actually using a chopstick. I found some chopsticks on clearance, and I use those in my crafting stash because you never know when you need a chopstick. It's skinnier at one end, and so that worked well to fit in there to make it stronger. I attached it with hot glue, but I was still worried that it wasn't quite strong enough. So I'm going to reinforce it with some more hot glue and wrap some twine around the little joint there because it was still wobbling a little bit even when I glued it on. It is wider at the bottom than at the top, which worked really well for this. So I just wind that around until it seems a little bit sturdier. And there is my little beach umbrella. I thought maybe I could just tie it to the side of my chair, but I wasn't really digging that feel. So I'm actually going to use a wood base. I thought one of these like little decorative wood plaques from the Dollar Tree would make the perfect base. It's not too big. It's not going to take away from it, but I can drill through the wood easily to make an opening for this chopstick so that my beach umbrella will be nice and strong sitting next to my little beach chair. So I just kind of mark out where I want that to be using a large drill bit, and my drill, I'm just going to drill a hole in there. Whenever I am kind of suspending something like that, if I can put the wood dowel or the chopstick in this case down inside the wood like that, I find it so much sturdier. I do need it to be a little bit bigger here because of the square shape of the chopstick. So I drilled it a little bit bigger, and I also want it to be slightly at an angle. So I think that's going to work. I add some hot glue to the hole in the wood and add our beach umbrella, holding it to the side so it'll lean a little bit. And then we can add the beach chair. But first, I want to add some sand, of course, for our little beach. This is what it looks like so far. I just left it the natural wood. And then just using school glue all over, I put a pretty good coat on there and use a brush to spread that around. And then we're going to use some of the tan sand from the Dollar Tree. I'm not going to cover this like really complete. I don't have any spray glue right now. So I think just a fine layer of the sand all around glued on with the school glue is going to be fine. If you can see some of the wood through, it will kind of blend in. It goes with the wood feel of the chair and the umbrella handle. Now, to attach the chair to it, I can't really hot glue very well onto the sand, of course, so I'm actually going to use a nail right here in the wood base of my chair just to keep this in place because I want to keep this all together as one DIY. So I just use a small nail there and nail right through the dowel into the wood sign. And then I use a little bit more glue and sand to cover up the nail so you can't see that in the final project. And let me show you how cute this is. Again, I'm going to have the little starfish laying out in the sun. Somebody sitting in the chair. It's going to be a little starfish. And I think this is so cute. Very subtle 4th of July again with the turquoise colors and the red, white, and turquoise. But we have the flag stripes. We have a sunning starfish. Super fun and an easy little beach underneath. I didn't really add any seashells or anything to it because I wanted it to be kind of simple, but you totally could if you wanted to. But isn't this so cute? I love it. I'm always looking for an idea with those little umbrellas from the toy section. For this DIY, I wanted to make a flag and I wanted to give it a little different approach. I've made a lot of coastal flags here on my channel and I wanted to do something besides starfish. And so I'm actually going to use dolphins and palm trees to make this flag. I have a square sign from the Dollar Tree, a red craft bag for the fabric, and then I found these napkins. They say they're from Target. I don't remember buying these at Target though. Maybe I did. I thought I bought them on Temu. I guess I could have bought them on Temu and they say Target. I don't know. But they are like a pastel turquoise color with white palm trees all over. So I thought the palm trees would make great stars for our flag. So I'm just going to decoupage that on to this section up here at the top. I thought that would be really fun, and I do want to use the wood panel since this is a wood panel sign. So I will cut kind of individual strips of this, but for this part, I'm just going to go ahead and cut a square down and Mod Podge this on. This napkin was actually pretty sturdy. Maybe the Target napkins are a little bit better than the ones I get at Dollar Tree for decoupage because I didn't have any problems with wrinkling or anything. I just put a very thin coat of Mod Podge on my wood sign, and I'm going to go right up here to the corner. And I thought this was a fun take for the star part of the flag. And it's just going to be a square flag, not a rectangular one. So you can kind of mix it up if you want. It's your flag. Once I got that dry, I went over it again with another thin coat of Mod Podge to seal that on there. And then I'm going to make the red part of the flag, actually most of it, is going to be this red craft fabric from the Dollar Tree. And what I want to do is make white dolphin stripes across it for the stripes. I thought that'd be really fun. But I thought this red fabric bag would add a fun texture to the sign. Gluing that on with Mod Podge as well for our stripes, and it's just the right size as you can see. There is a seam at the top though, so I will have to use the rest of that bag for my fourth and final stripe on this. But the bottom two sections are going to go all the way across. But again, I kind of want to work one section at a time. I did realize that you could see through it more than I thought, so I may have made this little section a little bit too wide, so I just cut it and kind of peeled off any of the excess napkin here because I noticed that you could see it through the red fabric. I didn't think you'd be able to, but you could, and I want it to be more of a square. And then I'm also going to kind of trim up this paper now that it's dry, cut off any of the napkin that is in the grooves, and also recut the hole there for the hanger. Now we can get started on the red fabric. I'm going to work with it in a couple of parts. So I cut it in half here so I can do the two stripes here at the bottom. And I want to try to use my straighter edges. I find that I cut a little bit straighter with a razor blade than I do with my scissors. So I'm going to use that for my straight line here. And I'm using a lot of Mod Podge for the fabric because I need it to be really strong to keep this on here. And then I just go over it with a dry paper towel to smooth that out, using my razor blade to cut that into the groove. I love these slatted board signs from the Dollar Tree. They are my favorite. They come in so many different shapes and sizes too, and some with frames, some without, like this one. And then I'm going to use my straight edge here that I cut here for the bottom, gluing that on with Mod Podge as well. And once that starts to dry, I can cut off the excess fabric there as well. The top two stripes are going to be a little bit smaller in size, but I think we can make that work around that part. And I wanted most of it to be red so that I could go over it with something white to make the stripes. That's why I'm not alternating like colors with the red and white stripes. And once I get it on there and starts to dry, I can kind of flip it over and cut off the excess fabric. Now, I was trying to be patient with this and letting it dry because these materials from the Dollar Tree, like these little craft bags are made out of, just do not respond well to heat. You'll see, I'm going to melt part of it here in just a minute because I got impatient by waiting for it to dry and I used a little bit of heat. But I would encourage you, if you're going to use this material, definitely do not use your heat gun or blow dryer. I'm going to need one more section here for the top so I don't get like that seam that was on the top of the bag. And I'm just going to glue this part on here too. I find it easier to get a couple straight edges like that, and it's because it's easier to cut off from the back as well. This was me being impatient, and look what it did. But luckily, it melted the fabric over on the side where I didn't need it. But that's why that's why I was trying to be patient because I knew that was going to happen. And then cut another hole there for the hanger. I can use the hanger that came with it, but this time I want the knots to be on the front. So I just fed that through, and then I can just knot it here on this side. This was such a fun DIY, and one of the only shore living items I can find this year at some of my Dollar Trees are these little beach shapes like this, like the dolphins or the sea turtles or something like that. So I'm going to use some of my dolphins. If you wanted to switch it up and do different creatures, you could, but I like the fact that they're kind of all the same. I think it's going to form a nice stripe. And these are like the little makeup sponges that I get on Amazon. I think I have those in my Amazon shop. They're really inexpensive since I haven't been able to find them at Dollar Tree forever. And I kind of gave up asking. But I'm going to paint those with a couple of coats of white to really make these pop against those red flag stripes. Once I get those all painted and dry, we can start putting this together. So I'm going to have like the red stripe on top, and then the white stripe will be 2 white dolphins kind of end to end here. And I'm going to do the same thing on everyone. So for these 2 top ones, I have enough for 2 dolphins. On the bottom 2 rows, I have enough room for 4 dolphins. And so I just glue those all on. This project had so many fun different textures on it. I really love how it turned out. It was so easy. This is it, our little palm tree and dolphin flag for the 4th of July. I love it. Look how cute that turned out. Using some interesting items like napkins, a little craft bag, and some of those little wood shapes from the Dollar Tree. Isn't that fun? I've made a lot of different kinds of coastal flags on my channel, but I don't think I've ever made a palm tree and dolphin flag, so I think that's really unique. I really hope you enjoyed all 13 of these 4th of July Dollar Tree DIYs. I had such a great time putting all of these DIYs together for you today. Please let me know which 4th of July DIY is your favorite down in the comments below. And don't forget to check out my second channel, Crafty Little Beach, for individual DIYs on your phone. I'm almost monetized over there after a year of posting. So check it out and enjoy the final reveal.
Baby, on the 4th of July, when all the colors would fly, we watched the flames in the dark down by the fireside. just wait. Wait for better days to come and carry us like wind in our sails. Hold on tight, I can smell the shore, it's right in front of us if we just hold on tight. This vision that I saw is getting closer every dawn.
Thank you for making it all the way to the end of today's Crafty 4th of July episode. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to all of my YouTube members for your support. Thank you to Melinda Elizabeth, Jamie Job, Susan Edmonds, Janae Farrington, Amelia Wren, Donna Schreiner, I Am Mojo Jojo, Marin Christensen, Adrian Brolt, Donna Tanner, Kim Rogers, Maria Cruz Pagan, Powell Puppy Life, Renee Albanese, Lori Hollingsworth, Mindy Hupp, and Jenny. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And if you would like to become a Crafty Beach Bum member, all you have to do is hit the join button next to today's video on your computer, or I think you can do it on your phone as well. You're going to get early ad-free access to my content, a badge next to your name when you comment down below, and a shout out in every video. We would also love to see what you've been DIYing. Make sure to share your crafts with us at our private Facebook group. It is always linked in the description of the video, and we would love to see what you've been crafting. Also, would you like some more 4th of July crafting inspiration? I have tons of 4th of July content. Be sure to check out one of these videos right here. And until next time, happy crafting.